Hi, this is Cliff Banks with Autovate, and I am here with Alex Vetter, the CEO of Cars.com. We're in Cars.com's offices in downtown Chicago. This is a real honor for me, a real treat, because Alex, I think we've known each other nearly 25 years.
That's right.
Gone back quite a few years. I kind of grown up as a journalist covering you and covering the company. This year, 25-year anniversary for Cars.com. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I really don't like to think too much about the past, Cliff, because that's not where we're headed, but it is. My team keeps reminding me that only 5% of companies endure for 25 years. So it certainly, I know, is an achievement, but I really believe our best years are ahead. And so I spend more time thinking about the future than I do the past.
Sure. Now, when you guys first came on the scene, and you guys were the new media, kind of somewhat displacing the old media, so to speak, the newspapers and even some broadcast advertising, because you were able to provide more data and more insight into the customer. But not long after you took over as CEO of Cars.com, you brought in several people. I was one of them, into the offices here, and you asked us to write down on a piece of paper. You might not like that. You did not like my answer either, but what did we think of the Cars.com? And my answer was, it was the new old media, because people were starting to look at the listings business as being old. And it was interesting to see that comparison or contrast, when you guys first came on the scene.
I remember that meeting. I flew you in and a handful of industry consultants to really just do an assessment of what they were seeing in the market. And that was right when we were architecting the business for a new form of growth. I mean, when I took over as CEO, I knew I didn't want to maintain the legacy business, but rather build something bigger, better, and bolder.
Right.
And that meant we had to build up from our past into something new. And so I remember that meeting. It was a pivotal input into our strategy. And I look now where we are today, I think, 7 years later?
Yeah.
And the strategy is coming to life, and the business results are going with it.
Right. We'll talk a little bit more about some of those changes, but you became CEO, and then after a while took the company public. And that was a whole process, I'm sure, learning experience too, but walk us through that a little bit.
Well, look, this company, I've enjoyed navigating this company through multiple phases of ownership.
Right.
We were owned by almost a consortium initially. We were able to get the company sold into a singular owner. But
and that consortium were legacy
media companies. Right? I mean, we had New York Times, Washington Post, Tribune Company. So we had some big time investors. But to be candid, I mean, the business was managed more to defend and protect their legacy advertising media business as a complement,
right?
As opposed to a pure play digital technology company that's poised for growth. And so, wrestling the company free from that oversight and standing up an independent, publicly traded board was enormously important for me, because it allowed this company to start to focus on its strategy,
right,
and not being in service of someone else.
Sure. So the IPO happens, and then not long after, the activist investors came knocking. And not just the activists, but one of the more cutthroat or aggressive activist investors, Starboard, Jeffrey Smith. I've got to say this, not too often as CEOs survive that. And from my perspective, I really think you wrote the playbook on how to engage and interact with activist investors such as Starboard.
Well, look, I think when you're a legacy business that's been legacy controlled,
sure,
I can understand why people see what I saw, which was there's an opportunity here to change this business and position it for growth. I think our approach back then, like we do with a lot of investors, is, we listen. I think feedback's a gift.
Right.
And so that while even though they were an activist, you can learn stuff from what other people see in the market. And I think we showed up with our ears wide open. If I had to shortcut the story, I mean, prior to taking the company public, I had laid out for the board a 10-point plan on both what were our strengths and weaknesses and where did we need to shift the business to. And so when the activists came after us, I think they had like a 3 or 4-point plan. And I had already laid out 10 priorities, of which many of them were already in process or being executed. So in that case, the activist wasn't presenting net new ideas. In fact, one of their ideas was to buy back the affiliations that were controlling our sales efforts. And I had already negotiated buybacks with, I think at that point, we had already agreed to terms in principle. If not, I've already executed the deals, and they were announced shortly after that. But those deals took months
But the media presented it as you were succumbing or playing.
Yeah, sure.
But you and I had already talked about it. So
more importantly, the board knew my plan.
Right.
And so I'm very blessed that the board that we stood up at the onset.
Right.
Were very eager in the transformation that I wanted to run. And they were not only supportive of the plan, I think they were equally intimidated in terms of the ambition, right? Because we had a lot of work to do. We had a legacy technology infrastructure that was divided amongst mobile, desktop, and our app experiences, and no investment in technology. We had a brand that was being supported by intermediaries, not being directly invested in. We had no real product roadmap, and we had this arm's length wholesale retail agreement where most of the economic advantage was going to partners as opposed. So the board knew that this was going to be a triple Lindy over the Shark Tank, to use a movie analogy, but it was clear. And I think that getting board alignment was so difficult when we were owned by a consortium because everybody, again, had their own interest. Right. Having a strong independent board allows everybody to lean into the macro trends, look at your business and chart a path forward. And when you can get that alignment, because everyone's only focused on the success of the asset, it's actually easier, at least with a high-class board that I've got.
I don't get the impression that you're managing by quarterly results or quarterly capitalism, as some have called it. You've taken more of the long-term view for the success of the company rather than the short-term hits. Well, those are important, for investors, but still, it seems to me that you're executing a plan that looks beyond just the next quarter results.
Well, I think probably the best example of that would be buying back our affiliate agreements, because we knew it would cause a lot of dealer churn because our subscriptions were tied into legacy media bundles, and we were going to break that out and start charging ourselves. So we knew that was going to inflict short-term pain. Same thing on rebuilding the technology platform. We almost had to tear down all of our SEO authority in order to build it back up. There were some deliberate impacts that we took in order to stand up a much more effective business. But if you look at the end result, we're growing top-line revenue at a steady state. We're trending towards 30% EBITDA margins. We're leading the industry in traffic, and our technology solutions are now growing, at a really fast rate. And so, it's rewarding to see the transformation not only play out the way we intended it, but now we've got durable lines of growth. And keep in mind, Cliff, that's all happening while OEM business has been on the sidelines for the better part of 3 years. That is typically our highest margin revenue, has the strongest flow through from top to bottom. So when OEM business picks back up, I think you'll see an incredible financial picture.
When do you think that? What's your forecast?
Well, I think you probably have a better read on that than I do. I know there's a lot of puts and takes and supplier negotiations or union negotiations happening, and so it's hard to predict the outcomes of those things. But we see a steady return of the new car market, and importantly, when I look at other industries, particularly I look at CPG, what the CPG companies have realized is that if they want to grow sales, they can't just focus on driving traffic to their properties, but rather they have to optimize marketplaces to generate conversion in those places that consumers shop. And so I think auto is a little bit behind the CPG industry. CPG got there quicker because they're very analytically driven, and they realize that spending all your fortunes on Google doesn't generate incremental sales. It generates a ton of digital activities, but it doesn't really command incrementality. And if you look at my platform, 90% of Cars.com shoppers are undecided on make, model, and dealer selection when they begin. And so the opportunity to influence them is, I think, massive. And the car companies that are listening, give me a call, because I know we can help them move the new cars that they're building, and growing inventories.
Right. Well, we're entering this new era of transportation. Everyone talks about the mobility or transportation. We have the whole EV, the connected vehicle play coming. Walk us through where you see this new era going and how it's going to impact dealer relationships, the dealer model.
Well, look, I want to start by not assuming your listeners know everything about my business, because even though the name of the company is cars.com, if you actually understand our business strategy, starting with the acquisition of Dealer Inspire, following on with the acquisition of AccuTrade, Credit IQ, standing up our fuel media platform, we've built technology solutions that can enable the industry to do things much better and more efficient than ever before. And so, that's number one. We're building a platform for the industry. When I look at the big industry trends that you could say are analogous to our strategy, the two I would point to would be commerce media, where McKinsey, I think, reports that commerce media is going to account for 60% of the all growth in digital spending. Okay. And again, that's managing sales funnel activities on marketplaces. It's why Apple sells more iPhones through Amazon today than they did ever before, because they're optimizing the spend on Amazon. In fact, Amazon, I think, has got $40 billion in ad revenue, even though they're a transactional model. Right. The other one I would say is vertical SaaS, which is software being designed to fit a specific industry. And vertical SaaS companies are exploding in all kinds of long tail industries. And I want to be the OG of vertical SaaS and automotive. And so to get to your question, the key to our strategy is actually to bring OEMs and dealers together. Today, for the past, call it decade, I think OEMs and their dealer networks have really been at odds. It's a two-tiered system, yes. And so I understand there's friction there. But if you think about what the consumer wants, which is selection and someone to help them with pricing and local service and support, I submit the retail system is the most effective system to move large machinery or merchandise. Right. And OEMs, what they build is extraordinarily complex. And they need to focus on product quality because it's a hyper-competitive market for product. And so I argue that the two-tier system, when everybody sticks to their knitting, is super efficient. Right. And I don't see the OEM movement toward direct-to-consumer as being a profitable endeavor. I think that the OEMs that try to recreate the retail model are going to burn through a lot of investor capital in the process.
People will respond with, well, what about Elon Musk? What about Tesla? They've been able to do it.
I mean, it's hard not to just say, there's only one rocket boy. Right. He launched the rocket of EVs and literally rockets into space. And I don't think any other OEM is going to enjoy the benefits of a first mover advantage that is that sensational and that innovative. Right. And so you're quickly then going to be trading on features, product, price. Right. And simplicity of ordering and buying. And if you look at some of the other EV clones, they're really struggling to balance all what you need to be successul in this market. Right. And so again, it's I've used this analogy inside the company. There aren't many two-sport athletes anymore, Cliff. It used to be, when I was growing up, there were many pro athletes that transitioned between sports. Right. Specialization happens in every industry, and this is a very complex field.
Yeah. There's only one Otani, there's only one Elon Musk, right? I think it makes sense. That's the way I look at it. You talked a little bit about building out a new platform, and walk us through that. What does that mean for the dealer, for the dealer's business?
Well, look, I think many dealers, particularly, and I'm speaking as a group, sure. I thought they've always looked at cars.com and many of our similarly situated marketplace peers as frenemies or potential adversaries. Sure. And by the way, some of that was well earned. Right. Some of the actions by my peers, I think, really created a nefarious sort of race to the bottom. Right. And we've not ever done that. We've built a level playing field. We want to give a 15-point used car operator the same footing as, a large mega dealer group, and let the consumer control the experience, not engineer a bidding war or again, a race to the bottom. And so I do think the industry is starting to realize that there's a difference between aggregators and platforms. I think Bill Gates famously said, aggregators withhold their customer information for selfish gain, where platforms promote their participants and drive more profitability to their customers. Right. And so we've architected the business to be very overt at promoting our retail partners, helping them differentiate on dimensions other than price. Right. If anything, we talk about is we're trying to create a race to the top. We want to elevate this to be a much more consumer-driven industry where the retail experience is as good, if not rivals, other retail environments. And the way we're going to do that is curating through experience. And the retailers that do right by their customers, take care of their customers, are going to elevate in our environment, where most of the other competitors in my category, the only way to win on those platforms is to lower your price.
And your acquisition strategy has been governed by that.
That's right. I mean, we want, through Dealer Inspire, we want dealers to have the best websites. We want them to have state-of-the-art technology, and we can leverage the infrastructure and backbone of Cars.com to enable that retail website far more cost-effectively than if we didn't have the monolith of Cars.com.
Right.
And so all of our technology decisions are about how do we connect people directly to the retail network. I think if there is a conflict, the OEM agencies are always wanting to drive traffic to their sites, and we're always reminding them the dealers are the ones that have the cars to sell. Like, let's unite that.
Right.
And so some of the OEMs, like on certified pre-owned or other things, have figured this out, that when the OEMs promote on our platform, we can drive increased activities to their dealer network. Right. And then the health of their inventory turn rate is faster. And so we believe big that retail alignment between the OEM and the dealer is going to benefit the consumer.
Let's talk about some of the data that Cars.com gathers today and what it's showing. I mean, there's a lot of noise about inventory day supply, EV sales versus demand versus what's on the lots today. What's the Cars.com data telling us?
Well, keep in mind that not only do we have nearly 30 million people looking at our marketplace every month, but we've got almost 100 million people traveling through our 6,000 plus dealer websites. So sure. We are sitting on an absolute goldmine of user data. And the trends are always changing. They ebb and flow with the market.
Sure.
When gas prices were clipping $5, EV search volume was tripling almost every week. And now that gas prices have cooled, we see EV demand softening.
Okay.
And so the marketplace and our data sets give us real clear signal and visibility about what's happening in the market. I think what's interesting trend is that EV product is being produced at a massive rate. EV inventory is up almost 300%.
Right.
While consumer demand is down nearly 14%
year over year data.
Correct. So the OEMs are building a lot more cars, but consumer interest in EV is softening.
And the search data is, I mean, it's not just...
Yeah, so we benchmark search share. EV search share, I think at its highest peak when gas prices was 8% of total.
Right.
And I know a lot of the industry forecasts were it was going to get to 50% by 2030. Well, there's going to be at least some massive changes in order to hit those benchmarks. I don't see it happening.
And the search share today for EVs is for new vehicles
sub 5%.
Sub 5.
And used is risen a little bit. And so I think you've got a few things there, right? Okay. You've got still the top two issues with consumers are the infrastructure cost to install EV networks and availability and range anxiety. And so the deals that some of the OEMs have done to align with Elon's charging network, I think are going to help, but that's also going to be a few years out.
A couple years out, right.
And so you're not going to see this spike on those announcements. And I do think there's some challenges in EV, not to mention, I mean, most of the new product coming into the market is all targeted at the highest end of the market. And now you've got this consumer concerns around inflation and affordability. And I think we're sitting on a gold mine of information that we can enable the industry to be much more market driven.
Right. What's your data show just in terms of what customers are searching for in Cars.com? In terms of the whole dealer or direct to consumer model that I think the talk of that is dying. I think the manufacturers are realizing they're not going to get there. I think they floated some trial balloons.
Buying online is not the top prevailing trend.
Right.
Finding the right car that meets their family needs is the most important thing. Seeing the car and actually being able to test drive it remains super relevant. And then getting a fair deal also remains, top driver. None of that is about add to shopping cart, order, and have it arrive at my dealership. But I think as the industry, they think that is such a panacea opportunity, or it's not, it's not quite the opportunity that the industry believes.
Right.
And so again, the retail system, dealers will tell you that so many consumers come in thinking they want to buy one thing and drive another off the lot. This is one of the few categories where the purchase funnel actually widens at the end. because of the size of the transaction,
Right.
brand consideration expands the closer you are
That's
to
fascinating.
purchase.
Right.
Because now you're really in touch with does this fit my garage? Does
Right.
this fit my basketball player or whatever it is?
Right.
Like, can this car do what I need it to do? And so knowing that about this category, I think it makes it really difficult on direct to consumer. What I'm really excited about also is that I think the OEMs are starting to realize that in order to sell cars online, guess what you got to do? You got to process trade-ins. And so for the first time, we've got OEMs talking to us about using AccuTrade as a way to generate real-time vehicle values for trade-ins, guaranteeing consumers a price point online in order to get them to place an order on the new car. And so I think we're well positioned to help OEMs and dealers work together to not only get customers out of their cars, but also put them in new product.
Right. All right. So the future, let's talk about AI. How does it change your business? How does it change the industry, if at all? What are you guys looking at?
I'll start by maybe offering a view on what the industry's got to do. I think, number one, we have to get OEM and dealer alignment to optimize retail sales. And we've talked enough about that. But the second thing is, if you look at dealership consolidation, the dirty little secret in my mind is that the unit economics actually don't get much better with scale. Meaning that, the profitability per vehicle sold is no different if you own 20 stores or 2.
Okay.
And or at least I should say that the leverage between a large dealer group. And so where is that efficiency going to come from? I think it's going to come from technology. And that means replacing a lot of human process and manual intensive work in favor of using technology to speed and generate operating leverage. And so what's an example of that? A lot of dealerships have specialists that handle vehicle appraisal. Well, with AccuTrade, we're reducing a 40-minute process down to 4 minutes, and we're generating a more accurate vehicle value. And you think about some of the large dealer groups who've got huge teams that are all about appraising vehicles. It doesn't scale, where technology can get operating leverage. And rather than needing an expert to do it, a young college graduate can plug in our technology and generate a precision appraisal and accurate vehicle value. So technology is going to be the big enabler, and the dealerships that embrace technology as the way to achieve operating leverage, particularly the larger dealer groups, I think they are going to be able to outperform the dealerships that are waiting using the legacy system.
All right, so let me ask you this then. Some of the conventional wisdom today, including mine, has been you got to go big or go home as a dealer. You're saying maybe not.
The operating leverage will accelerate for those that embrace technology.
Okay.
I think the consolidation is prudent in that by building a bigger footprint, you should, in theory, be able to design operating efficiencies through scale.
Right. Okay.
It's been slower to occur in this industry, where in other industries, when you consolidate, the synergy is apparent much faster.
Right.
And so I believe the companies that embrace technology to replace the manual systems that exist in every store with automation and technology are going to be able to take outsized shares of the market.
Okay. So it's really their capacity to engage with new...
Well, process transactions at a faster level and get more throughput through their physical plant.
Right.
And today, if you think about some of the operating efficiencies that large dealer groups have, is trading inventory dealer to dealer. And so that's an area of investment for us. We want to launch a dealer to dealer buying platform that will allow large dealer groups to realize that the store in Florida needs the convertibles in the north. As the winter months come, they know now they can move that inventory because we show them strong retail demand signals for those vehicles that are currently sitting on lots, in the north. And so dealer groups, we're going to enable them to trade inventory amongst themselves using our retail demand data, and then longer term, enable the dealerships to operate as a retail collective.
So what's the AI component there?
Well, I think predicting days to sale on specific assets of inventory and even recommending different points of egress for that inventory, because we see data-driven signals that car is in high demand elsewhere, just not on your lot.
Right.
I mean, today dealerships ideally want to turn cars on a 60-day window, but the wholesale market, if you look at the cars moving through wholesale, they're all aging much longer than that. And so through AI, what we can do is we can leverage our retail demand data to accurately predict days to sale down to the specific car. And so what that enables us to do is to build an operating model for the industry where they can see both retail signals, wholesale opportunities, and manage towards the profitability maximization that every transaction has to have.
Right. And so that's taking AI technology and leveraging the data that Cars.com has.
Correct.
And being able to build predictive models and even real-time
well, back to vertical SaaS and commerce media, the essence of our strategy.
Right.
Technology gets commoditized over time, Cliff.
Sure.
Like, as much as, I'm proud that we were an early innovator to launch Cars.com, like, you saw that other competitors could copy, building a website.
Sure.
And so you have to build strategic advantages. And I think our strategic advantages, where many of our competitors are selling technology for technology's sake, we're coupling that with retail demand.
Okay.
And I think, the auto industry is trying to become much more efficient. And so embedding that retail demand into our technology solutions is a force multiplier. If I had appraisal technology, I'm certain another technologist could copy it.
Right.
But now the fact is I'm generating buying opportunities through the Cars.com marketplace to the dealers using AccuTrade.
Right.
That is harder to recreate.
Sure.
And so it's the coupling of our technology solutions with embedded consumer demand that makes our platform super rich for the industry and will drive, again, a much more profitable outcome for retailers.
As you look at to 2030, from an industry perspective, do you see significant change happen, or do you think we're going to be steadily or moderately adding some of these pieces? When I say adding these pieces, but becoming better than what we are today, or do you see a full scale change, radical change?
I'm super proud of how fast the retail system is evolving.
Right.
If you inside it, you can complain about it.
Right.
But I get to see retailers of all shapes and sizes. And one thing I've learned is that no one's going to out hustle local automotive retail. They are quick to pounce on opportunities when they see it. And they are disrupting themselves more today than they ever have in the past. Now, part of that has been driven by the gentrification of legacy owners transitioning ownership to younger operators who are very tech forward and centric, and that will only speed the cycle. I think if there is an accelerant to the industry, it's getting OEMs and dealerships to optimize together, because I think when that happens, the OEMs that are able to leverage their dealer networks and retail media, they're going to be able to generate outsized results than their peers and drive profitability for the business. The legacy spending models of launching a car and on the Super Bowl, and that still exists, and it's amazing to me it still exists when consumer behavior has moved so much faster.
Right.
I think we know that's because those structures have incentive and reward systems built in it for the people running those plays, but it's not what the consumer wants, and we think the consumer will ultimately be what the industry has to follow.
I like your comment about the gentrification, but I got to close with this. I had a dealer who was in his 80s in Southern California, and we were having lunch, and he showed me his new smartphone when the first smartphones came out. And he was showing me all of the advantages to owning one. And he was the one that convinced me to go buy a smartphone.
Harold Fitzgerald.
Oh, yes.
Is one of my favorite.
Sure.
Fitzgerald Auto Group. If you're out there listening, I mean, when we launched our Jack Fitzgerald, Harold is his right arm guy. But Jack, if you're listening, I mean, when we launched our fuel and market video product, Jack was picking out zip codes in real time and saying, how do we use your first party data? And so I think Jack, he's over 80.
Oh,
so believe me, there are many innovators in this industry who I admire and I learn from and inspire me. But I think just as a general statement, this industry is digitizing at a faster rate each and every year. And I think that digitization is going to continue to accelerate, which is going to make it a much more consumer-driven industry and a much more efficient industry as well.
Well, Alex, here's to another 25 years.
Oh, I don't think I'm going to do it for that long, Cliff.
Same here.
It's been an honor to be here as long as I have, and as long as they'll keep me, we're going to keep charting growth and innovation. So
you look like you're young enough to be able to do it, though.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your leadership, Cliff. It's great to always chat with you.
Same. Fantastic. Thank you.